Quote, however, participants did raise concerns about the integration of these topics into technical assignments. Some expressed that they would rather study ethics outside of CS curriculum and prefer it be a standalone course. If I am expecting and wanting a class to be technical in nature, I would likely be unhappy writing a paper since it is not what I signed up for, end quote. It's from page 4. Now, this brings up a really interesting idea. I've talked about this in other episodes on curricula, like in episode 125, Images of Curriculum, and episode 126, Contemporary Venues of Curriculum Inquiry. I talk about how there are many different ways of thinking of a curriculum or a degree in terms of what is the purpose or the vision for that. Which, speaking of, check out episode 20, CS for What? Diverse Visions of Computer Science Education and Practice for a more nuanced discussion on that idea. But if I were to really take a reductionist approach and kind of create two categories, some people might go into a computer science class and they might think of just the technical. I'm going to learn how to code and that's it. Other people might go to it from a more broader understanding. Like, I'm going to learn about not only just how to program, but the impacts of computing. We're going to talk about the ethics, the history of it, etc., etc. Now, obviously, in that hypothetical, there's a lot of gray area in between and many other different ways of thinking of this. But for the sake of the argument, think of it as these two separate camps, basically, to make this a little bit easier to understand. Now, to make this a little less personal in terms of it's tied to computer science, let's talk about this in relation to music, which, again, my background's in music education, studied percussion, etc. So if I went into a percussion lesson and I wanted to learn how to play the marimba, which is like a large xylophone. You play it with 2 to 4 mallets, and you can make some really interesting, beautiful, spooky, whatever kind of music that you like. If I went into those marimba lessons, I personally would be expecting to learn the technicalities, some ways that I can improve my musicianship, and learn some specific pieces that I can perform in a recital or something like that. That is the first category where you're going into it expecting to learn essentially the algorithms. You're going to learn how to create music or create with code. But if instead I went into those lessons and they talked about how there's a rosewood shortage, which is a type of wood, and how that is impacting whether or not there are marimbas available or other instruments that use that rosewood, and how this is creating some deforestation issues that are problematically impacting different climates and different environments or different locales, and I had to write an essay about how that impact relates to myself wanting to get better at marimba, but we also learned a piece or two and learned some technical related things within that particular set of lessons. That might be more of the broader conceptualizing of computer science. So again, on one hand, we have the technical. I'm learning how to play the instrument. On the other hand, I might learn somewhat how to play the instrument, but also focus on other areas like some of the ethics related to playing that instrument. It's the same thing with computer science. We might learn just the algorithms, or we might learn algorithms and the ethics or impacts of what we do with those algorithms. Again, there's a lot of gray area in between those two different camps that I've created. But the point is, students come into these classes with an expectation of where it's going to lean towards one of these camps or another one of these camps. As computer science educators, we also might lean more towards one or the other. You might have just heard that and go, well, duh, Jared, we're supposed to focus on this camp and not this other camp. But another computer science educator might have it completely flipped. Or somebody might have a completely different perspective from a third camp that I didn't even mention. All of these are things that we could think about when we are teaching students or designing a class. And that might be something that you discuss the first class that you have with students. Here's what the expectations are so you can manage them from the beginning. Do they expect to 100% only focus on learning how to write algorithms and not talking about the impacts of computing? Or is it mainly going to focus on impacts of computing and not necessarily even talk about the algorithms? Again, where you align, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. I think in a healthy way, it should probably be somewhere towards the middle, but it depends on what you're signing up for. Are you signing up for a computer science degree, or are you signing up for a boot camp to learn how to use a very specific programming language in a very specific context, just so you can get a job? If that is your only goal, and you want to do it in a compressed period of time, then you might only learn the algorithms, the technical side of things. But if you want to learn broadly speaking, then maybe you'll get a full degree. So in other words, there's just many things to consider when kind of creating these different options. And thankfully, there are many different options for people to take. Again, I'm a huge fan of multi-perspectival education, and so I think there's a lot of value in that. But that's just my opinion, and that's something that I value.